This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
Yo.
Hello.
What's good?
I don't know.
Feels like it's been so much time has passed since we were last here on these sacred Zoom grounds.
Yes. We were out last week for...
We were out last week. Yeah, I was there. I remember that now.
I think
They were not there.
No, I was not there, apparently.
I think the last time was when the three of us recorded together, where Chris was here. And
Yeah, that was just weird.
Our little disaster podcast.
No. We recorded with Raphael since then.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Right. We don't even know.
God, dude, we are
What the hell
so
day
good at
is
what we
it?
do. It's crazy. Like, is anyone trying to step up to this?
I don't know. I may have said this before, but I definitely told Andrew. We recorded the live podcast at RubyConf, and just watching me and Andrew share a microphone and be setting up like 30 seconds beforehand, and everyone else is like already organized and has been set up for an hour was like the most.
Scuffed.
It was like
It was
the most,
on brand.
yeah. If you want to know how the podcast operates, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Jason's, can I just take that mic stand? Well, maybe. Well, Nick, he's like, I'm going to take it. Yeah. It's ours now. I like that a lot.
Totally my mic stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it with me at my house.
Oh, word? Bet?
No. Bet.
Bet. Cool. Well, Chris, do you want to jump into it unless you have something else?
Yeah, let's do it. So this week we have Thiago and Stephanie from Hexdevs. Do you guys want to say hi and a quick introduction?
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much for inviting us, Chris, Jason, and Andrew. It's nice to meet you all. And yeah, I'm Thiago. I'm the co-founder of Hexdevs. I'm a software engineer as well, a Rubyist, love Ruby on Rails. And yeah, it's nice to be here. And we live in Vancouver. It's sunny today, so it's nice.
Hey, I'm Stephanie and I'm the co-founder of Hexdevs with Thiago. I'm also a developer, but I have done lots of things in the past. I was an English teacher. I also worked with academic writing and editing and research. Now we are working on Hexdevs. And yeah, I love Ruby and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
We're glad to have you. I think people have probably come across you recently because of the open source live streams and things. So I'd love to, and I was a guest on one of those, which is super fun. So thanks for having me. I'd love to hear how you got started doing those and what your goal is for them and things, because I loved watching the one with Raphael and Tenderlove and just seeing like these people who are on the Rails core team, how do they work? And being able to like just witness that and pick up little tips and tricks from that is amazing. So what got you into it and what's the goals for it? I've found it really fun to watch.
Yeah, thank you. It was really fun to organizing them. To be completely honest, we started doing them without lots of planning. We just wanted to test all the advice that we get when people ask, what should I do to get experience? Or which projects should I contribute to? And everyone just say, oh, find a open source project to contribute to. Maybe, hey, Rails is open source. Maybe consider contributing to Rails. And that's not actionable. It doesn't work that way. And so I thought, can we just test that out and see what we can do? And it turns out that contributing to Rails is really, really hard. But we learned a lot of tricks along the way. And it helped me see contributing to projects in another way. Contribution, it's way more than just getting a PR merged. There are other ways that you can help. As we were doing the live sessions, just the two of us, we had no idea what we were doing. And the idea was to not edit anything, just show up how hard it is. It's a huge, scary code base. And I figured if the two of us could do at least something, maybe someone else would feel more confident to just try it out. As we were doing them, I had this idea of asking for a friend that works at Shopify, Gabi, amazing friend. I asked her, do you think Shopify would like to make a partnership with us? I would love to have some of the contributors that work at Shopify. And I just reached out. It turned out to be a great partnership. We have had Rafael and Aaron, also Chris, and we still have another one next. But the idea is to do exactly like Chris said, see how people work. What questions do they ask? What do they do when they get stuck? Learn some cool tricks. And the goal is give access to these experts for the community. Because even though it's open source, you're not there seeing how they work.
And it's also to show that you don't need to be a super genius expert to contribute to open source, because this is something that people are afraid to do that because they think, oh, I'm not an expert, I'm not a genius, I can't do that. But our session with Aaron Tenderlove was funny because he said, oh, I'm not an expert, I'm just doing things for fun and it's fun and I'm doing it. And I don't know JIT compilers at all. So I'm just doing this project to learn because I have no idea. And we're like, oh, this is so cool because even someone that you admire, we are big fans of Aaron, even him is not expert in everything, right? And he does things to learn. And what better way you can show that off than just doing it, showing people you can do it and learning from them and getting the experience and how they think a little bit. And so the session with Chris has a lot of experience doing live streaming and tutorials and all of that. But even doing it live, it's kind of sometimes tricky. You have to figure things out. So it's nice to see that's the real thing, that it's part of the job, right? But you don't know everything. You have to figure things out.
Yeah, I like that a lot because originally that was one of my goals with the screencast was I wanted to just sit down and do some feature and include the errors and everything else. But I realized that can be hard in like a 15-minute video because there's a lot that goes on where like, yeah, I made a typo or something, but my brain goes and quickly analyzes the error and thinks about the 1,000 different errors I've seen in the last year. And I'm like, oh, I saw this 9 months ago and whatever. And it can be like hard to capture that. So I feel like the live streams have done a good job of that. I know that I ran into like a typo and several other little things while we were recording. And it's reassuring to see that Tenderlove or Raphael or whomever make the same mistakes you do. That's a very nice thing to see and build some confidence in you, especially if you're self-taught, I feel like, because you always imagine they just can write code perfectly and not have the same struggles that you do, I think. So, Thiago, I'll have you start. What got you guys interested in doing this and how did you get started with Ruby in general? And that one led up to starting to try and focus on this area.
So how I got started with Ruby. So back in the day, I was a C#.NET developer in Brazil. So I was working for banks and financial institutions, and C# and Microsoft products are very popular for banking. It's either C# or Java. And I wanted to do C#, which was better for me. So I used to do that for a long time. And then while doing that, Microsoft came out with the ASP.NET MVC framework. And people said, oh, this is just a copy of Ruby on Rails. And I didn't know much about it. And I thought, okay, that's cool. MVC is cool. So I'll look into Ruby. But I never got around to do that. But eventually I got tired of working for banks and all the corporate stuff. And I started a business with two friends in Brazil. We're doing MVPs and small projects for startups and smaller companies. And then I did this workshop with two guys from a company. I don't think they exist anymore. They're very similar to ThoughtBot. They're kind of like a consulting company in Brazil. And they would deliver your MVP in a week. And I thought it was just amazing. And they were using Ruby on Rails, of course, to do that. And then I did the workshop with them to learn how they did it. And it just blew my mind because the client would come in on Monday. They would talk about the project. They will scope it out, figure out what was needed to be done. And then they would work on it for 3 days. They had 2 Ruby developers and 1 designer. and they would just create the MVP for you. And then on Friday, they would launch it. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. That's what I need for my business because I wanted to ship things faster and deliver value to clients faster. And that's how I got started. It was around 2014. So yeah, 7 years ago, I guess. And that's how I got into it. I thought it was just amazing how much you could build with so little. Like 1 or 2 developers, you can build a whole bunch of stuff so quickly. And compared to the stuff that I was doing with C# and other stuff, it was not like that at all. It was just so much work to do anything. And that's how I got started with Ruby on Rails. And after that, I kept working on the business. And eventually I moved on to do a master's. And then eventually I got a job here in Vancouver. I got hired. The company was a Ruby on Rails company. They sponsored my visa. And then that's how we got here in Canada. Yeah, Stephanie, she was doing computer science back then. And she was learning Java and C and all that sort of stuff. And I already knew about Ruby, was in love with Ruby. And she was saying, oh, this is so hard. It's so annoying to do projects and stuff. And I was like, oh, I know that Ruby is so much better than Java and C. But if I tell her, she's not going to do the college assignments anymore. She just wants to work with Ruby. She's going to be like spoiled a little bit. So it's kind of like holding back the information. But eventually, like I started talking about, just do it in Ruby. It's just so much easier. And I guess she kind of got started as well, right?
One of my lines in the sand for dropping out of college was being in a data structures class, learning about, I don't know, linked lists or something, and looking up, oh, like, how would I implement that in Ruby? And the first article was like, don't. Like,
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, this has been fun. And I dropped out of college.
I learned what Ruby was the second semester, or I started writing Ruby the second semester of my senior year. And I remember just being really angry, filled with this rage. Like I felt like I had spent 4 years up all night writing Java, like working on some stupid tic-tac-toe program or whatever. And this whole time not wanting to be a programmer, not liking it and wanting to do something else. And then someone gave me Ruby one day and I was like, just angry. I was paying all this money to get this career and I found it somewhere else.
Yeah, I didn't finish the computer science. I dropped after 1 year. And so, Andrew, you were the only one who did computer science?
I finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question for both of you. I know that I'm a guest, but I have a question.
So
What do you think helps when you're doing interviews or when if you apply to jobs? Like I know that Chris has his own stuff, but what difference do you think does it make? Because I see a lot of people struggling a lot with confidence when applying for jobs because they see not having computer science degree. Oh, it's harder. And then they don't even try. They just see that as a bad thing. So does it make any difference for you?
Does it make any difference for me? No. I generally, truly believe I wasted 4 years of my life doing things that I can't mention on this podcast. And if I could take it all back, I would, because I wanted to go to a trade school or to a boot camp or something. And my parents said that wasn't an option. I hear a lot of people who are like, I can't apply because of this or that reason. I'm not saying that's this, but that's also something like if you want to be better at interviewing, you need to interview, right? It's like a practice. So just because they may not be accepting you doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. I mean, I know it's hard to interview. Like it sucks. I was there. It's a pain in the butt, but the more you do it, the better you'll be. And at the end of the day, that's how you get the even better job further down the line. Going to college did not help me with interviews. I had a job in college that did.
So perfect story for this. I had gone through CS degree, done the algorithms, and we wrote our own programming language from scratch and all kinds of stuff. And my first job interview was I walked into this room and they were like, go stand by the whiteboard. And I thought it was just going to be me and 2 other guys. Turns out the entire group came in of 20 people sitting across from me. And I'm already nervous. And I'm like, oh no, what have I walked into? So my CS degree did not have any required networking or databases courses at all. no web development, like nothing. The first thing they asked me, or the main interview was on the whiteboard, design a database. And they're like, so we want to have users. So what would you do? And I was like, I guess I'd make a users table with an email and a name and password or whatever. And they're like, okay, so we want to add blog posts. How does that work? Do you connect them to the users and all that stuff? And I'm up there like doodling and all of that on the whiteboard. And I don't know what I'm doing because I've never had a class on it. And the only way I know how to do this is because of Rails associations and scaffolds and models. I had learned it by writing Rails for the past year while I was in school, doing Rails development for one of the professors. And at the end of the interview, they were like, because I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is all stuff that I pieced together from learning Rails. And they were like, we should have made that interview harder because you like aced it. And I was like, what do you mean? So that was the strangest time because it was like the stuff I taught myself was really valuable. The stuff I learned in the CS degree was useful 10 years down the line kind of thing. You're working on a giant application and some Ruby code that you wrote is inefficient and you actually need to learn the C code that actually implements that and see why your code is being run inefficiently. And it's like, I don't generally need to know that ahead of time. I need to know it when it comes up. And so all of the like algorithms and learning assembly and whatnot was not useful for getting a job, really. It was the stuff that I had taught myself from Rails. So that was like such a weird moment where I realized like Rails has really taught me more practically than my degree.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add on to that, because I realized I didn't really answer your specific question. Although, and I've said this in the past, I'm not going to reiterate. I've had the exact same experience as Chris. I passed one of my classes senior year because of Rails. But in terms of whether the employer cares about it, I feel like it's very different depending on where you are in the world. And it also depends on who the company is run by. Because personally, and this is just my experience and obviously not a slight to anyone with a computer science degree as I am one, but I find that the best junior developers I've ever met always come from a second career. Like they've already been doing something else and they're transitioning regardless of their age. They're transitioning in and they go through a boot camp. Those have been some of the best developers I've ever met. And so if I was running a company, I wouldn't care. I think this is changing faster and faster as the years wear on, because like it used to be like when I was looking for jobs, it's like, no, you had to have a CS degree. But now I think it's needed less and less. And I would love to get to a place where we can just remove that barrier to entry altogether, which we, the entrepreneurs of today and tomorrow, have the control over. So I think in general, yeah, it will look better to them just on paper that you have one. But does it make you a better developer? No, I don't believe so.
Yeah, that's a good point. What I was getting at is a lot of people see the degree as the silver bullet and then they invest all the time and the money in it and they might not even need it. So I'm not saying that education is bad. You shouldn't go to college. I'm not saying that. We are also privileged that it is something common nowadays. But it's just a mistake for you to put all of your efforts into something that you're not really sure what you want for your career. And it breaks my heart every time I see people thinking, they are thinking of doing a boot camp and then they're like, oh, but is a CS degree better? And I'm like, no, you're asking the wrong question. What do you want for your career? What type of companies do you see yourself working at? So yeah, thanks for sharing the experience. I'll go back to my guest role now.
I was going to say, but the type of person you are also matters like a ton, which is something that I think we generally discount in the moment when thinking about that. But like college is not for everyone. And if you're in like a very privileged position where you can go to college and not come out with a massive amount of debt, then yeah, you should go just because like you should, because it will help you. But if you're not in that position where you can basically go for free and you're not the type of person that wants to be in college, don't go. There's other ways now, which didn't used to be a thing. And it's now, I think, becoming, especially in tech, it's becoming way more standard.
Yeah, but one thing that happens is that we see a lot of people that go to a boot camp and they get their first job and they get stuck there or maybe on the next few jobs. because they don't have kind of the background that Chris was talking about, or they don't know how to practice outside of the job. So, and also I think it's also related to confidence. When you don't have the degree and you compare yourself to other people, sometimes you kind of lack the confidence and think, oh, if I had a degree, I would be a better developer, which is not really true. But they don't think they can learn those skills. They just get stuck. They can't get a better job. They can't pass the algorithm interview because it's just like a gatekeeper thing, right? Or you need to solve these problems just to show that you have a degree or whatever. And we see a lot of people getting stuck there in the mid-level zone. And there's a lot of frustration as well. And I don't think there's not a lot of companies and people helping them, because we see a lot of people helping more junior developers, but there's kind of a gap there in the middle where you're a mid-level, you have some experience, but how can I get better? How can I learn the things that I don't know? Yeah, Chris does that really well. And it's something that with Hexdevs, we're trying to fill in that gap where we want to take you from that mid-level and help you move forward with your career. And it's not only technical stuff, it's also confidence. It's also learning how to build your reputation, learning how to present a talk or write blog posts and be helpful in general, be a helpful person and show off your skills.
That is so incredibly interesting. And also, I feel like we could be best friends, not going to lie, because these are the things that I think about all the time as well. And also getting very passionate about, especially the part where you're talking about, it's not necessarily the skills, but it's the things around it. And what was the biggest change for me, and I'm going to say this, it's not as easy said as done, but what really changes for me was getting a mentor, or really just someone who I could tell those anxieties to, who could then dispel them. Because so now I mentor Colin Gilbert, and I talk to other developers as well. But when Colin, one thing I've noticed more and more, like in the beginning, I was like, oh, well, I'll probably help him write code or something. I don't know. Like, guy had a mentor, but I didn't know what was going to happen. But as it's kind of gone on, it's kind of turned into more about, okay, I'm having these anxieties or like this or that. And us kind of talking through that, like those struggles, like when you're in a development position and you have all these things going on around you, and like, how do you deal with it? And how do you communicate? And how do you like give a code review like a certain way? Or, so that's incredibly interesting that you were going for this audience, because I've not heard anyone really talking about it. I mean, granted, like it's hard to hear people even talking about juniors. So to hear someone even thinking about like, oh, well, what about the people who were just juniors themselves? Why that demographic specifically? Did it just kind of jump out as the biggest problem?
I think for us, we decided to go that way because that's what I experienced firsthand. Like I mentioned, I didn't finish computer science. I was mostly learning by myself and asking for help. And I am the living proof that just focusing on the technical skills is not the solution for you to move forward with your career. I struggled a lot with anxiety. And I think also because I didn't have the computer science degree, I felt like I was worth less as a professional. I was always thinking, this is a mistake. I shouldn't be here. What are they doing? And this year, I started doing lots of work on my mental health. And now I can see, why did it take so long for me to understand that? Like I had to go through some really bad time, getting burned out simply because I was being so hard and so critical on myself. And I see that a lot. I see lots of people with lots of talent, people that are motivated, that they go after and learn by themselves. Like you mentioned, people that had already a previous career, they are the ones that stand out. And I was like, man, I'm so tired of seeing these people dropping the industry because they think they don't belong or they're not capable. And I really want to change that because I wanted someone to have said that to me, but I didn't have anyone. And I had to go through a burnout and through some serious mental health issues to figure out that by myself. And I have some friends who just don't believe in themselves. And I am always there trying to be the cheerleaders for them because that's what I wanted for me.
Yeah. So like Andrew mentioned, when you get a mentor, it helps. And I've been mentoring people for a long time now. And I see that a lot. So mentees come, they talk to me, they're frustrated, they can't learn new skills or they can get the job or they have like confidence problems, but they see their problem, technical issue. The way they see their problem is that they think they're lacking some technical skill, but actually it's not. They have all the skills they need. I know seniors who are not as good as some of my mentees, they're not just as good. They don't know a lot. They're not self-motivated. In this field, they're very self-motivated. They want to get better. They want to stand out, but they lack the confidence. They lack some things, and if you help them build up those skills and help them so they are not too self-critical, so they stop judging themselves so much and they start being more curious about things. So what can I learn here? What am I missing? So I kind of give them some tools and some ideas to practice. But it's funny that you mentioned that because at the beginning when I started mentoring people, I also thought that I would help them build stuff. When I would learn Ruby, so read this book, do this exercise, build this thing, build this project. But then eventually I realized that no, that's not what you need. What you need is something slightly different, because then you can work on the projects. When you're not feeling like crap, when you're not judging yourself, then you can get curious and start working, and then you start moving forward.
Go back one little thing that you said, Andrew, that it's really hard for you to keep doing something that is hard, that is new, if you don't know anyone to talk about your struggles with. And I see that's also one of the things that we see that we want to help our audience and the community in general is, listen, you got to have someone that you can talk about. You are going to need someone to hear you and to say, hey, that's hard. I think you're doing actually a great job. You just have to think about something else. I think that's because there is still this misconception that to be a programmer, you work by yourself for everything and you don't work with other people. And I think that's just so bad. We interviewed a psychologist in our podcast this week. We ended up having a group therapy, but we were talking about all of these things and he gave some pretty good tips on how to overcome all of this. And for example, when I said in the beginning, oh, what am I doing here in this job? What are they thinking? He just said, hey, it's not your job to think about this. They hired you. They know what they are doing. Your job is to figure things out, not to worry about your worth or anything. So yeah, I love talking about this stuff.
Jason, I had to stand up because I have a statement to make. Person listening to this podcast, right now, you're probably demographically a mid-level to a senior level developer. And if you're not mentoring someone, you should really think hard and why about that. Because it's not for everyone, right? Not everyone can do it. But the biggest thing I hear people say over and over again is, I'm not smart enough to mentor someone. All right. But as you've just heard, for all of us talking about, and I've had this exact same experience and I've seen it play out with other people. When you get someone to mentor, what it ends up being is much less about code and more about being a developer as a person and how you interact in the world, because that person's experience, how do you deal with a project manager who doesn't respect you, or how do you do with this, or the anxieties that come with getting a new position. And I know a lot of people out there. I met a lot of them at RubyConf who would be fantastic mentors and probably aren't doing it right now because they have their own anxieties. And I want all of those people listening to just to think about it, because there's someone out there who you could change their life completely at little to no cost to yourself. And you should do that because that's what makes the community better. All right, call out over. I'll sit back down.
I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Honey Badger. They're a single platform for error monitoring, uptime monitoring, and cron monitoring. I've blown away several people because of the real-time error monitoring with Honey Badger. I've caught an error and fixed it before the customer could even email me and say that something was wrong. They get pretty blown away by that experience, and it always makes my day. So thanks to Honey Badger for making that even possible. Star, Josh, and Ben created Honey Badger as a 100% bootstrapped monitoring solution. Without investors breathing down their necks, they can spend all their time making a better product for you, the developer. So check them out at honeybadger.io and let them know you heard about them on Remote Ruby. It's interesting that I remember it being in school, and I had a couple friends that we would give ourselves extra challenges over the homework where we would just be like, it's fun. This homework's stupid and we're not really learning anything. So we just give ourselves a challenge and like, for the next 4 hours, we're going to do this project, but who can do it in the least amount of code? Or those little things, you don't realize it, but those are moments where you're mentoring each other and you're at the exact same skill level or whatever, like you're really close and you're mentoring each other because you're sharing those things together. And you don't even have to find somebody who's a year behind you or whatever. Like you can still mentor. Heck, you can mentor people who know more than you, but you can teach them about some other piece they don't know about yet or whatever that you might. And that I think was a lot of those moments where like when I was programming alone and just frustrated, it becomes a big drag on your mental health. But then sitting down with like my friend and we're like, oh my gosh, check this out. If I do it this way, we can like be way more efficient and way faster. And we're both like, oh, that's really cool. And discovering things and like enjoying it versus the whole like, this is hard. I'm not any good. I hate myself. I had a lot of those times just when I was working alone and having just anyone to share those discoveries and interesting tidbits with really makes it more fun and way more sustainable. It's way better to be able to share those moments with someone and the hard, painful times where you're both like, we have no idea what's wrong or how to fix it. And that's good too, because you can just share that mental burden with someone else. I imagine we've all probably had moments like that. Jason, have you had good moments that you can think of with frustration and, just sharing those struggles with somebody else, like really help make it easier?
It's like every day still for me. I'm in a position now I've always wanted to be in where I can help others. Like at work, I don't know, not necessarily like a mentor role, but like a rubber duck role. And I learned just as much out of those rubber duck sessions.
I have a rubber duck in my car because for me, sometimes all I need is just to say it out loud to someone else. That's all I need.
So one thing that I've learned last year, is that it can either be learning and be curious or judging. So like maybe something on the brain where you're either learning or you're judging. And so when you say, oh, I'm feeling like crap, I'm not good enough, you're judging. So you're not learning anything. So you have to quickly change your mindset. And I've learned how to do that by asking questions. So I have some post-its on my wall with some questions. And whenever I'm feeling bad about myself, I see that as a sign or a symptom. And then you build the habit of looking at the question because the question changes your mind. So you look at a question. So I'm feeling like crap. And I look at a question and the question is, oh, what can I learn here? Or what am I missing here? Or you can come up with different questions as long as they're not judgmental. Like, oh, why am I so bad? That doesn't work. But ask a question and think about it because you immediately change your perception. You start being more curious and then you just feel better. You just automatically, you feel better.
Reading a whole book on that right now. It's called Unfuck Yourself. It talks a lot about basically how you frame things and how much of an impact it has on your life.
I read so many of those books. Jason, I'm still so there's a lot of anxieties about it, especially like if you're new to the industry. What are these people thinking? Because tech has a bad rep for a reason. To me, seeing other things like tech is so special in that we're kind of on the forefront of like acceptance and like a lot of things that like society, a lot of other like industries are kind of catching up to. But we obviously still have our dirt and our problems and things that we need to fix. It's always interesting to me that because we have this interesting kind of like social ecosystem as a tech developer, where like on the outside, you're looked at as someone who has these insane privileges, which we do. But on the inside, we judge ourselves because of those privileges so much harder and so much harsher. And it can lead to a very toxic situation. So if you're in that situation though, like I've told, I can't tell you how many people, dude, you're a great developer. Come on, what are you talking about, right? It's no matter how many times you tell them, they're not going to hear it. It's the same for me, right? Like I had so many people, and this is not a flex, tell me at RubyConf that I was smart. I'm like, I'm not smart. I just do things in public. you guys are as well. And I thought about this earlier. You guys are like kind of mentors to the public in a sense. You're putting your content out there, and anyone who wants to like come along for the ride is welcome to it. And you guys are putting out a ton of content. It's insane. And what can we do as an industry though? Because obviously there's something wrong that all these developers are having this same experience, but it's still not fixed. Because when I see issues, when I've come up, I've gone back and tried to change them, but this is still an issue. So why?
The moment of truth. I think about that all the time. I also don't have the answers for it. What I can say from my experience is I think it's detrimental to focus that much only on technical skills and basically don't even ask, how do you relate to people? If someone says something that you don't like, how do you approach that? How do you ask for help? And how do you help someone that is struggling but is not saying anything? I do have this idea, and maybe, well, probably for sure, it's because of my experience. I used to feel like I didn't belong because I was too soft. And there is this misconception that you have to be someone harsh, like, or direct, or there's no place for discussion or for everyone to just share. Oh, okay, we have this project right now. Do you have any idea how we're going to solve this? Yeah, we're all in this together. At least from my experience, that's what I think. It's really hurting the industry, is this idea that you have to be smart. I don't believe in smart. I believe in being self-driven, going after what you want, and figuring things out. As long as you believe that, hey, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. That's what you need. And I think it is highly detrimental to have all of this effort into technical stuff, undermining all of the other work. And that's why I really like Dr. Goldman's work on emotional intelligence. They have a nice podcast called First Person Plural, Emotional Intelligence and Beyond. And what they say basically with every interview there is people don't just want a job. They want to feel like they are appreciated, like their work is valued. And I think that is still a bit far from the tech industry in general.
The point you made about the smug developer who just pretends they know everything, even though they're talking out their butt most of the time. I'm just going to say this. Somewhere out there, and they may even be listening to this podcast, someone made me feel like the dumbest person I'd ever felt in my entire life by doing something just like that. I don't know if they did it on purpose or I don't know if it was an accident, but I've never forgotten it. And I've had this thing in me ever since. It made me feel like the worst I'd ever felt in my life. So if you're trying to be this alpha person in the code room, first off, check yourself right now at the door. And then second off, like, why? It's just, I don't know. It's great for you to like voice that up though. I just wanted to highlight that. If you're doing that, stop, because that may work for you, but you may be stepping on other people and you should stop to evaluate that.
I was going to say along those lines, something you reminded me of, Stephanie. It was like, there's something strange about becoming a developer where you're just sitting by yourself a lot of the time to learn. But what are you doing at your job? You're never alone. You're always building stuff with other people for other people. That's all it's about. You're building stuff for people to use. And it's very strange that the way into the industry is so lonely. And yet when you're actually a developer, like you're always working with other people. If you're doing open source, you're building stuff to serve all these people that you don't actually interact with even that often, but you do. And it seems so strange that it's that way. And then there are those people who are trying to prove to themselves their self-worth and that they're better than you or whatever. And it reflects more on them than it does you. If anybody ever does that to you, like it's wrong of them to do that, but it is probably their insecurity showing more than anything else, I would say. There's something odd about all that where, you know, why a CS degree and learning to code and all this by yourself at home or at a coffee shop or whatever, watching tutorials and stuff instead of more working with some other people to learn and build stuff together, because that's what we do every day. And I don't think there's enough emphasis on that. Like one of the classes that I had was human computer interaction. And I really thought it was going to be stupid. And getting into the course, I was like, actually, this is what everything that we're doing is about. this should be a required course because it's all about how do, people interact with, even if it's you are using software in your car, you still have to think about the user when you're developing the software. And same thing goes for all of the stuff that you could possibly program in a car, like the ECU and whatever else. Like you have to think about what is the user doing, pressing the accelerator and whatnot. And it's still tied to humans, no matter what you're building for the most part. And I've always thought that was kind of a strange piece of, crypto is interesting, but the one thing that they don't ever really take into account is humans. So they have this like perfect concept of the world that if everything was fine, there would be no fraud, there would be no refunds, there would be none of this stuff. There would be no need for support teams and there would be no need for any of this. That is the biggest reason why credit card companies exist. They're dealing with fraud and all this nonsense. And you cannot really program a perfect world like that. It just isn't practical. So I absolutely hear you guys on this stuff because that is something that I don't think gets talked about enough.
I think that a lot of people from the tech world have this kind of idealistic visual reality that everything should conform to norms and code is auditable. So it's kind of an idealistic vision where you have this mental model and then the mental model needs to, reality must conform to the mental model, but it's just not true at all. Like reality is messy. And I think that's also what causes this kind of lack of empathy a little bit, where you're not really thinking about the customer. You're not really into this because you want to serve the customers. You're more interested in algorithms and math and things that are rational stuff. And then you kind of lose the human element. And all the problems that we have is human problems. It's not engineering. It's mostly human problems. You have all these sorts of problems that maybe if you explain the functionality a little better, people wouldn't have any problems. Or maybe if you are more open to talking about issues with your team, if you're better at communication, they will work better with you. They will respect you more, things like that. So we're talking about assertiveness, communication with Dr. Randy Patterson on the podcast. It's something that is not just tech, it's everywhere. And so if you learn how to communicate, if you learn how to serve the customer, you're going to stand out. So that's the way it is. And I think a lot about this, where in the beginning of my career, I was very focused on technical stuff, optimization, all of that. But eventually, and also because I had a business, I realized that the tech is not that important at all. It's just, how can I serve my customers? How can I sell? How can I write? So for Hexdevs, we had to learn how to write. We had to learn how to research, how to understand people's problems. And that's how it got us to do the things we are doing, because we understand, they have these problems and we can help them this way. And everything is about the user and the customer. And the tech is not that relevant, to be honest. It's just a distraction.
I think looking back at a previous job when I was promoted from just developer to senior developer, I don't think it had anything to do with my ability. I think it's because I was just always willing to do the work. It was more of a soft, there's an attitude, a communication. I think that's actually really what helped me. The tech kind of followed along with it because I got more experience. But I think back on that a lot. I think it has to do more with not tech.
I agree. And I literally was just talking to Colin about this. It's about showing up. If you show up over and over again, those are the people that go the farthest in my experience. The people that don't quit. Doesn't matter how smart you are, because I feel like I'm one of those people that just shows up because I'm not that smart. I'm not particularly that bright. I'm not that great at anything, but what I am good at is always being there. So I feel like you're right that it is about doing that.
Along with that, I feel like as you show up every day, you start to pick up on patterns that are like, I used to make assumptions about this is just the way it's done. And then you start to realize, we need to just think about these other exceptions here. And you start to realize more about how to think and model the world and all its complexities in your software instead of going for that real rigid, simple, clean, perfect implementation, the more senior you get, the more you realize that's not possible. And you work towards that. And that is always kind of driving your design. We are getting close to time. I think you guys mentioned you may have a workshop coming up soon. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, that would be great. Before we go there, I just want to congratulate you all for talking about this. We are part of the Ruby community, and I know we are one of the nicest communities out there, but we still need to talk about it. So congrats on taking a stand, I guess. Yeah, about the workshop, it's kind of related to what we are talking. We want to help people see what else can they do. It's really hard if you don't know someone who has more experience than you, or you don't have a mentor, and you're just there in your second job after a boot camp or after you learn how to code. You're not sure what you should be doing to go forward. So all you do is applying for jobs and getting rejections. But there are other ways, such as we mentioned here, showing up, building your reputation, being willing to figure things out. So we are working on the workshop. Hopefully we'll open up the doors in January. Thiago can give more details about the workshop itself, but the other part of the product, we want to do a case study interviews with people that got promoted or who got a job to senior. And it's good to see you sharing your experiences, because that's exactly what we want to show to people. How did these people do? Instead of just asking for generic advice on Reddit.
Yeah. So like we talked about here, you get stuck in the mid-level, and then to move forward, sometimes it's hard. You don't know what you should be doing, what you should be learning. And I have the confidence and the skills and all of that. And so we are working on a software design workshop that helps you get some hands-on experience with some more complex applications and do it production grade way, so you can get experience with those things. Because sometimes you don't have that opportunity at your job. You're just doing simple stuff or stuff that doesn't really get you to the next level. And so we are working on that. And we also want to add some elements of not just technical stuff, but, how can you build confidence? How can you keep practicing? And after the workshop. So we're just trying to figure out, okay, how much stuff we can put into the workshop and not be like 40 hours of work. But yeah, just trying to figure out what we can put in there and the other stuff that people can do afterwards so they can keep practicing. Because this is what we do at Hexdevs. We kind of research ways to become an expert. We want to help people to become experts at Ruby development. And we want them to do things that are actionable, little exercises, build habits that you can do every day, because that's how you get better. Just the little things every day that you do to get better. And we don't want to be like a big course, something super complicated, because we know that people are busy. We don't have a bunch of time. So we're launching in January the software design workshop. People can sign up for the wait list. So you can go to hexdevs.com/workshop and get on the wait list today.
So I was thinking, I literally cannot name a single developer who has not expressed these similar type of anxieties to me. So if you've been listening to this whole podcast and you're not like convinced that you should do this, here's your conviction. Do it, because this sounds great. And I'm a vibe person. Y'all have made me excited again. When I talk about stuff like this, I get very excited. Jason was there. I have reactions, quote unquote. Some could call it kind of manic.
Triggers.
It's fine. Yeah, there's things. And I've had that feeling this whole time where I can't sit down and I can't shut up. And so I feel like y'all are going to do some like amazing work in that workshop and really help some people. And I want our listeners to get some help if you need it. And you need it. Look, I'm talking to myself right now. I'm staring straight in my eyes. I know you need it. Get some help, buddy.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one little bit. When we say that we want everyone to become experts, I used to have a misconception about what being an expert meant, because I had bad experiences with experts. But it turns out that there's a lot of research on how you can do it every day. I have basically done a RubyConf talk on that. It's also on our website. And what we also do is picking up this research from the academic world. I love that kind of things. I think it's my superpower. and just say, okay, how can real people do this in their real lives? So being experts is available for everyone. And we want to make it more accessible and bring down all these misconceptions about it. And it's really cool. I think I really wanted to have someone else told me or just showed me that I was focusing too much on this technical stuff that didn't actually make a lot of difference. And being an expert is way more than just being the one who knows it all and is always right at the meetings. So we want to help with that.
Yeah, I love this because I think over time I realized that the people that I look up to that I think are experts usually have just done a lot of stuff and they've seen the problems before and they don't have any magical solution. It's just they've seen it before and you haven't. And they've got context that makes it seem like they can just jump straight to the solution. And you can't do that because you got to figure it out first. But that really opened my eyes a lot to the magicalness of these people who are experts. It's not really that magical. And they may know just as much as you. They've just happened to have seen things before. And that really helps make it feel more encouraging. And I feel like that's sort of the same feeling that you have if you were self-taught and you're trying to figure out, would I feel more confident if I had a CS degree? The answer is like, look, they read some books and did some homework that you could grab those same books off Amazon and go through the exact same stuff. And just because they paid a lot of money to go do that, they may have a little bit of confidence, but probably not as much as you would expect. It's just someone told them to learn those things, not necessarily did they need them or do they even remember them is a lot of it. So yeah, I love all this because it's a hard thing to get past. And there's just a million things to learn every day. You're like, if I'm not learning React, am I falling behind? And then this next thing comes out and the next thing and whatever. And I'm still trying to figure out all of the nuances of Ruby or Rails 10 years later. And I feel like I still don't know it that well. There's so many things. And that's okay. So I'm excited for your workshop because I think it can help a lot of people.
Yeah, I think for us, maybe if I could ask from you what, I don't know if you, Chris, or the others do workshops. Like, do you ever present a workshop, hosted a workshop, or went to a workshop that you really liked? And how was that for you? Because we want to make sure that we do something that people want to delight people. We want to serve them and make sure that they are supported, that they feel, this is the best workshop that I've ever done and I'm moving forward with my career. And we are kind of asking people around, say, hey, so tell me about this. Can you give me some tips or anything? So I would ask you, Tri, if you have any tips for us.
I'm not a workshop person because I don't learn like that. And I also can't sit still for more than 10 minutes in a row. So it makes workshops kind of hard. But I think what has always benefited the workshops I've attended is that, number one, the idea that the person comes in and the class has to wait 10, 15, 20 minutes to get them set up or like they're behind. I think whenever I've been in a workshop and that's happening, I know it's not the instructor's fault, but to a degree, there is like a level of blame that I lay onto them. I know that people don't read instructions, yada, yada. But like, if it's everyone in the room, then I'm like, okay, what did you not do? So I feel like as much pre-prep you can give them as possible. Make sure you have Ruby. This is how you install Ruby. This is how you install Ruby on a Windows computer. If you need any help, you can reach us at these hours prior to the workshop starting. Anything you can do to eliminate like the possibility of someone starting and then not being able to work on it. Because I've been in those situations before where like you're in a workshop and they're starting to talk about something really cool, but you can't get what you're trying to work on fast. And they've already started to go ahead and you don't want to stop everyone. So you don't want to raise your hand and you feel like an idiot and it sucks. So whatever you could possibly do to eliminate any technology things, and like they will happen, right? The internet sucks. It's stupid. It should go away. It's here to stay. And I feel whatever can be done, if attention is paid to that, I feel like it will pay off for you as the speaker and the attendee. Because that sucks to be in that position. It hurt. It's like, dang it, just they're doing cool stuff and I can't do it.
Yeah, I was going to say along those lines, it probably helps to kind of pair people together so that you are one or two people trying to do a workshop for 20 plus people or whatever, and you can't go individually help every single person through the whole thing. So possibly pairing people into groups of 2 or 3, they can help each other get through things and you can guide what's going on more that way. Because the other thing is you don't want them to all be individuals alone, not talking to other people, because it's part of what this is all about anyways. So I like the workshops that kind of are thinking about like, yes, we're going to do some project or whatever that we work through for a few hours, but also have thought about what's next. This 4 hours or whatever long workshop it is only so much that we can do. So how can we set it up so that everybody can join a Slack or something and continue helping each other and whatever going forward? And like, maybe you guys can be in that and make it something that is less just a short time box thing that thinks about, here's more homework that you can do and whatever, like just the stuff past the workshop. Because yeah, there is a lot you can do in the workshop itself, but I feel like there's the ones that I remember the most are the ones that have had some way of continuing on afterwards, like some way to just make it more permanent. And that was the ones that I remember the most.
Also, I find that like so many people have questions and they don't ask them because they don't want to look stupid or like this or that, whatever. I feel like number one is that you should encourage them to reach out to you in a way for them to reach out to you privately later or behind the scenes, so that someone who is embarrassed or maybe doesn't or has a hard time staring at someone's face or something, that they have that available to them. But also it would definitely depend on like the size of the workshop. But like, I feel like if you emailed or messaged, if it's on Slack or it's on email, if you went through before it started and send them just one message, a private message to them specifically, to every single person, that it could be the same thing as, hey, like we're your instructors. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me privately. Happy to answer any questions. The fact that you've already started the message between them, they'll be so much more likely to send you a message if they do have a question. So you've already established that like trust with them.
Yeah, those are really great tips. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, we do want to do that where it's just not one workshop, but like a process. So it starts early, you get some ideas, you get some help, and then you do the workshop, which is very focused. And then afterwards, you can keep working and building the habits. And we want to do the case studies with senior developers as well, so people can watch that afterwards. But we still, yeah, those are great ideas. Thank you for sharing.
If it's a local comp, if you're doing it with people locally, like if you were like, hey, if you're interested, every month on the day, I'll be at this coffee shop. And if you want to come talk about Ruby or what you're working on, just to encourage that follow up, but also to encourage them to keep in touch with each other. That's kind of how I think that's what really helps build a community.
Yeah, you're amazing. I took a lot of notes. Thank you for sharing all of that. Even my cat is excited. You guys are great. Thank you.
Now, thank y'all so much for coming on, and thank y'all for what y'all are doing, because it can be a thankless job, but what y'all are doing is so impactful in the community in ways that y'all can't even understand because you're so close to it. Because when y'all think about it as your body of work, and you probably have anxieties about it, and you probably have, well, it could be better, but to someone else, you may be gifting them a career. You may be turning their career around. You're doing things in people's lives that you'll never see, but it is happening. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for being on our show.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting us. Something that I tell Stephanie all the time, that my goal is to help millions of developers make a ton of money, by getting raises and getting promoted. And then they can start, investing, saving money so they can reach financial freedom. So that's my hidden goal with Hexdevs. I want to help these people make so much money and just do whatever they want. And I think this is going to help everybody. And so thanks so much for inviting us and helping us do that for people.
Well, thanks for coming on. We'll have a link to your workshop sign up and stuff, but do you want to share, where else we can find you online so people can follow you?
Sure. We are at hexdevs.com. Hexdevs. The workshop is at hexdevs.com/workshop. We also have a podcast, and we interviewed Ernesto. I don't know if you have ever interviewed him, such a nice person. My RubyConf talk is also at our YouTube channel, and we love talking to people. So feel free to send us an email or private message or anything. We're everywhere, I guess. Although not all the time, but we will reply when we can.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on. We enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.